Aloha! Thank you so much for being here tonight. We are excited to play this music for you. We have so much fun, and it's even more fun when we have people to enjoy with us. So let me introduce ourselves. This is Wendy Hindley, my pal in flute. I'm Jennifer Masada, and this is my husband, Kirk Corey. We're happy to be here to play for you tonight. We're having some discussions over exactly where to position ourselves so that we don't get blinded by the sun. It's moving and shaking. So if we stop and reposition ourselves, you will know why. So Kirk is going to introduce our first piece.
So Jennifer asked me whether I would do the introductions for all the pieces we're playing tonight. We have three different composers, Georg, Philipp, Telemann, Johann Sebastian Bach, and one of Bach's sons, Wilhelm Friedmann Bach. So the three composers have a lot of things in common. For instance, they've all been dead for a really long time. They're all generally considered German composers, although technically that's a little bit of a stretch because Germany didn't really exist then. They all spoke German and they all lived in what would eventually become Germany, so I guess that counts enough. So the two Bachs obviously related father and son. Telemann wasn't related, genetically, but he would be part of the Bach Ohana. He and Johann Sebastian were good friends. They were great admirers of each other's works. And in fact, a couple of other connections. The elder Bach named one of his sons, Carl Philipp Emanuel, so he shares the middle name Philipp with Georg Philipp Telemann, and Telemann was his godfather. So that would be another one of the connections. And then it was later on, somewhere in the 17th, I didn't pay enough attention to music history, so I get some of the dates wrong, but somewhere in there, Telemann was offered a very prestigious position as the Thomaskantor at the Thomasschule in Leipzig, which is a school that still exists today. And he turned it down because it didn't pay enough money, and so eventually Bach took the job. Now, whether that's just because he was more desperate for money, or whether it was because of the fact that he had 20 children and was looking for any excuse to get out of the house, I'll let you all decide that. But for all the people who succeeded him in the position, it was much more prestigious that Bach got the job, because ever since then they could all say, oh yeah, I've got Bach's old job. So back to Telemann. Telemann was born in 1681, died in 1767, I remember those days. And he was self-taught because his parents didn't want him to study music. And the best way to study music, if your parents don't want you to, is to be self-taught. He was a very prolific composer. He wrote over 3,000 compositions. Unlike Bach, he did not have a very enduring legacy. About 50 years after he died, people just stopped playing his music. And it wasn't until the early 20th century that he was rediscovered. And at that point, people wanted to have more variety. And so he's very widely played today, but there was really this big gap in time where people didn't play him all that much. So we're going to be playing a sonata of his that is for two flutes and keyboard. It's in 4 movements, slow, fast, even slower, and even faster. And as many of you know, there is a concert tradition of not clapping between the movements. However, if you feel moved to do so, it's perfectly all right, because it doesn't affect me that much, but they get a chance to breathe, so it's all good if you want to clap. All right, so this is a sonata in 4 movements by Georg Philipp Telemann. is a trio by Bach the father, J.S. Bach. He's usually referred to as the father, but honestly, it was a very, very musical family, going all the way back to his great-grandfather, who was an amateur musician. By the time it got down to his father and his uncle, they were both well-known, successful professional musicians. They were both students of Pachelbel. You may remember Pachelbel. He's the one that wrote thousands of things, but all anybody remembers is the canon. So Bach, J.S. Bach had the advantage of growing up in a very, very musical family. He was obviously very, very successful as a composer, as an organist, as a teacher. Part of the reason that Bach is so well known and so well loved today is not only because obviously of the quality of his music, but also because of the legacy of his teaching. There were a couple of pedagogical lines that came from his students that persist to this very day. Pretty much anybody who ever went to college has had at least one teacher that they can trace back to Bach. I'm up to 6 now for myself, and I don't even think that that's a particularly high number. But it's like I said, you know, Telemann's music had fallen out of favor for a long time, but because all of these musicians were part of the Bach tradition, they kept playing Bach over and over again and teaching it to their students, and that way it just persisted all the way to the present day. So he wrote quite a bit of music, a lot of instrumental music, a lot of church music. He had various appointments as musical director and organist at various churches. The piece that we're going to play for you now is a trio. It's actually originally an organ trio, and the term organ trio is kind of confusing because an organ trio is a piece for a solo instrument, but you've got the right hand, you've got the left hand, and then the 2 feet, that makes the trio. So this is an arrangement of an organ trio for 2 flutes and piano, and I hope you enjoy it. episode of MASH where Radar proclaimed, If you haven't seen it, it's probably on Hulu or Netflix or something. Go back, it's worth a watch. So the last composer that we have tonight is Wilhelm Friedmann Bach. It's another sonata. So Wilhelm Friedmann was the second oldest child of Johann Sebastian, the oldest son. I'm trying to remember, I think JS had 5 children who were pretty successful as professional musicians, but it mostly ended with them. Now, Wilhelm Friedmann should not be confused with his nephew, Wilhelm Friedrich, who was indeed the last of the professional Bach musicians. And when asked once why it was that there were no more Bachs that were musicians after him, his reply was, well, sometimes heredity runs out of ideas. So Wilhelm Friedmann, the one who we're playing, born in 1710 and died a lot later than that, 1783, I think. It wasn't on the test, so I have a hard time remembering that. He was very well regarded in his time. He wasn't very good, though, at keeping body and soul together as a musician. He did things that most musicians are taught early on not to do, like don't quit a job until you have a new one. So that was a problem for him. He had various jobs, but he made the mistake of leaving one before he had another. Tried to fill in with students and lessons and stuff like that. Eventually died in poverty, but I think a lot of the music is really, really fine music. Obviously, he lived in the shadow of his father, so that somehow, kept his reputation from growing. But I think this piece that we're going to play for you, we have enjoyed it really quite a bit. It is very similar to his father's musical style, and yet at the same time very, very distinct and quirky in a way that Dad never would have been. So this is a sonata in 3 movements. Fast, slow, fast, kind of like sonatas eventually came out to be, right? And so I hope you enjoy it. It's Sonata by Wilhelm Friedmann Bach. We don't know when that is, but we'll be sure to let you know. And in the meantime, there is an after-concert party. Who has some information on how we get those careful directions for all of 3 blocks away from here? So let me see. Joel, are you in the back somewhere?
No, he's there already.
That's right. He already had a. Okay.
Yes,
so you want to go down the highway. If you know where Holy Bakery Road is, it's on where we're going is Holy Bakery Road. So that little side street that goes off by Pomai Kai, you want to go down there and go almost all the way to the end. It's
There's
not
a
that
pink
far.
and green sign on your left, and you just shoot down there. Although, park on Oponepule.
Yes. Don't try to park on the road.
Yeah, park on Oponepule in front of Pomai Kai or in LNL, and then you'll see the throngs of people walking over to Joel and Wendy's. Thank you so much.
Thank you.